So I have a condition called Usher Syndrome. It's a condition which is a vision impairment, retinitis pigmentosa, deterioration, tunnel vision, night blindness, and I'm also hearing impaired. So I've worn hearing aids my whole life, and both of those conditions are combined to make up the Usher syndrome. I was diagnosed at about age 15. It was quite difficult at the time. There wasn't any support like there is today. We didn't have info days like this. Ophthalmologists at the time probably weren't as well prepared to forward me and my family on to get support and try and understand what the future was going to be like. So basically the reason I am standing here and having this opportunity to talk is through my passion of sport. It took me a while to find my way back into that passion when I was about 18 years old when I gave up on sport. I found it was going to be too difficult to compete with people who were not vision impaired, and at the time I didn't know I could go and compete against other vision impaired people. So it took me a while, probably about till I was about age 28 before I got into sport again, and sort of the last 5.5, 6 years of just since I've got back into that passion of just my life's changed, and as I said before, it's the reason I'm standing here and able to share my story with you and hopefully inspire some more people to make change in their life too, like I did. I'm a paratriathlete, so that's triathlon for people with disabilities. There's 5 categories of disability in triathlon, and one of them obviously for vision impaired people. What that involves, some of you may know what triathlon is. If not, it's basically swimming, riding and running, and the distances that I do are 750 metre swim, a 20 kilometre ride and a 5 kilometre run. The catch is that when I race, because I am vision impaired and there are other people who are completely blind when I race against, they obviously it's going to be quite difficult for them to ride a bike, let alone swim and run on their own. So we need a guide when we race. It's very similar across to other vision impaired sports. So we're basically connected together in the swim, we ride a tandem bike and we run together with a tether as well. The main goal for me at the moment, it was originally the Paralympics this year, but unfortunately the vision impaired men didn't get a medal event in Rio, but we're pretty confident we'll have one in Tokyo in 2020. So I just continue on with the training and racing around the world and trying to be the world's best, and then hopefully by 2020 I'll be there representing Australia. The main topic that I'm here to discuss today is something you may have read in the program. It's all about tools for transformation and healing. So what does this mean? It basically comes from experiencing life challenges, facing adversity, and taking calculated risks. And it also involves how you choose to approach and overcome these experiences in an effort to move forward. So everyone's going to face different challenges. They can be big, they can be small. Everyone's going to have a different way of approaching them as well. Some people struggle, some people are able to overcome them quite quickly and move on. So I guess I'll share some of my experiences today. When I was younger, I struggled with it myself. I had anxiety, depression. I still get that today as well when times do get tough. But I'm able to overcome them now through those experiences I've had. And as I said, a couple of them I'll share today. And hopefully, through those, through what I share, hopefully you might be able to find some of that or resonate that with yourself and relate to it, and actually it might help you understand how to approach these things in the future for yourself too. I guess some of the small challenges for vision impaired people that you may be able to relate to, navigating an unfamiliar area. I've already had that issue this morning, not knowing how to get into this building, so I had to call someone for help. So that's an ongoing thing. I know all vision impaired people will understand that. Finding anything in a supermarket, that's always a challenge. Knowing which bus stop or train stop to get off. Some of the big challenges that we can face, learning to use a cane or a guide dog, not just the learning part, but accepting that that's something that you're going to bring into your life. I haven't reached that point yet, but obviously someone like Rachel, she's got a guide dog, she's taken that step. It's a big challenge just to accept that, let alone to train and make that a part of your life. Going for a job, knowing when to tell the employer if you are blind or vision impaired. So there's just a couple of little things for people with vision impairments that they may experience. They are big challenges, small challenges, but every one of them are the same in that you need to know how to approach it, understand it and how to overcome it. I guess I'm trying to put a practical spin on it rather than looking at it in an emotional sense, because it actually does help you overcome these things when you look at it that way. Fear is often the biggest barrier, fear of the unknown and failure. That's obviously the toughest part to get through before you can actually overcome these big challenges that you face. The first experience that I had facing adversity was about 7 years ago, just before I got back into sport. Just to give you a quick outline of what that involved. I was facing a pretty tough part of my life. I was dealing with the fact that I was going blind. At that point, it was the first time I had my eyes tested by a specialist in about 9 years, so since I actually was diagnosed, because I just assumed that my eyes were going to get worse and there was nothing they could do, so I just sort of lived with it. But at that point, I had some good advice to, if I wanted to manage my life better, that I needed to get them checked out again, my eyes. And that was a bit of a reality check, so took a bit of a nosedive for a while, but I guess my way of getting out of that hole, I guess you could say, was I did something extreme. I just decided that I'd always wanted to live overseas, so moved over to Amsterdam. No reason, just wanted to try something different that no one else had done before, and ended up living over there for 1.5 years, and my life changed from that experience. Got back into sport, and I think without that experience I may not be standing here today and may not be able to share my story like I am. So that experience that I had throughout that time has set me up to be able to approach all the future sort of challenges and adversity that I've faced since, because it's sort of formed a bit of a blueprint for me to actually then to move forward. Some of the questions that I ask myself every time I approach a new challenge, there's a couple of questions that I ask myself, and they allow me to have that practical approach. So I ask, where will I end up if I continue doing the same thing that I've been doing? So if I don't change anything, nothing is going to change, basically. You can't wait for it to come to you. You've got to try and change it. So if you're going to end up where you were, then you're not going to get anything different, are you? So, and another question I ask myself is, what's the worst case scenario if I take this new direction? So if you are at a crossroad and you don't know what to do, you choose one direction, the worst case is that you end up back where you were, then it's, you can take that risk, basically. It's not going to be the end of the world. Unless where you're starting from is not where you want to be, then, try something new then. But that's the point, is try something new, take that risk, because you're not going to know unless you actually get out there and try it. So basically, I lived in Canberra for a couple of years until December. I was based there training. My coach was there. I started university. I moved to Canberra for triathlon, for my coach, for the Australian Institute of Sport. I was pretty well set up and had a good routine, and training environment was amazing. But in December last year, I decided that it just didn't feel right. I didn't have any family or friends in Canberra. I was just training and just doing uni. I wasn't going to Rio, so things had changed there. So I decided that I actually moved to Melbourne. It was actually for a girl as well. It was probably less than 2 months after moving, but that didn't continue on, I guess you could say. So that sort of threw a spanner in the works, having just up to move my life from somewhere that I was pretty well settled and familiar. So that made things very challenging. I didn't really have many people I knew in Melbourne. I was living out in the burbs. Didn't have any access to transport, and I'd just gotten to the point where I'd set up a new training environment and figured out all the bus routes and where all the shops were and how to get around, and made the area familiar. So I had to up and go again, which was quite hard. So I packed everything I could in a suitcase and left. I had to stay with a friend of a friend for a week, and then I had to try and find a new house. Had to get on Gumtree and look for houses around Melbourne. Didn't know where I was going to live. I just had to do it. It was as challenging as it was. I didn't go home with my tail between my legs, and no time did I think I want to go back to Canberra. I was always of the mindset that I'm here now. I'm meant to be here. Everything happens for a reason. So, and that's a motto that I follow all the time. So I thought, well, this is going to be a bit challenging, but I have to make it happen. So it took me a couple of weeks, found somewhere to live. I lived there for 2 months with a couple. That didn't work out. They weren't very fun to live with. They weren't very motivating, sitting on the couch all day. But again, I could have just stayed there, lived there, paid rent, and just kept doing what I was doing. But again, that didn't feel right. I wasn't happy there. I needed something different, needed a better environment. To get to the shops, it took me 20 minutes to walk. There were no street lights on the street, so when it was dark and I was coming home from swim training, which I was walking home from because there was no public transport, that was difficult. I almost went into the wrong house one night. Trains were 20 minutes walk away. It wasn't right, so I needed to change things again. And continue asking those same questions that I said before. They were my go-to questions. So I then found another home. I'm still there now. I love it. Everything's perfect. The training environment's amazing. I'm happy where I am. One of the, I guess with the triathlon side of things, that was always, for me, that's wherever I go, that's probably the most important thing, because I need that environment, I need that familiarity of where I'm training, being vision impaired. And the area that I moved to in Melbourne, in the Bayside area, around Hampton, amazing coffee. If you do like coffee, come to Hampton. But it's worked out perfectly. And, I said before I left Canberra, had a great training environment there. Everything was set up, everything was there for me to improve and reach my potential. But, it's amazing that, I moved to Melbourne and had all these struggles, but where I am now, I've actually improved more than I probably would have improved in 2 years' time in Canberra, just with my swimming and my running and my riding. Everything's out of sight to the point where I'm, potentially one of the top 2-3 in the world now, because I found this new environment, found a new swim coach. All these things would not have happened unless I took those risks. The next one is, it's basically called the Race to the Start Line, and that was in the last month. And I went overseas for the World Championships. I've been preparing really well. Everything in Melbourne was going well. Getting PBs, personal best times in the swim, bike and run. And then 6 weeks out from leaving to go to Rotterdam, I got a very random injury. I got a glass wound to my Achilles tendon. Don't ask why, I've explained it a million times. But basically that didn't heal. I did everything I could, raced around, getting physio, sports physicians, spending lots of money trying to get it right. Still went overseas, got physio every day before the race. And it didn't get better. Also, in that last 4 weeks before I left, if that wasn't bad enough and stressful enough, I had 2 ear infections. I had a cold like I've got now, as you can all hear. I also I decided a week before I was flying out that I'd check my flight itinerary just to make sure when I was flying out and which terminal and all that. And I checked it on the 7th of July. I thought I was flying out on the 14th of July, but the itinerary said, no, your flight's on the 6th of July. So that was more stress, thinking, should I be even going? What's going on? Questioning everything. So luckily, we didn't know it was my fault or if it was the travel agent's fault, so we sort of came to an agreement. But more stress was that because I didn't take that initial flight, they cancelled my return automatically, so that was more stress. But yeah, ended up getting on the flight. It was all sorted, got everything changed, got over to the race, still managing my ankle, not knowing how I'd go. I didn't run on it for 6 weeks until the day of the race, just to try and manage it. The injury didn't get better, so I couldn't run very well, and we also had an issue on the bike. So the rear wheel, the tyre, basically, it was like riding with the brakes on, basically. So everything that could go wrong went wrong for this race, which is why I titled it the Race to the Start Line, because in triathlon or most sports, the hardest part is to actually get to the start line. You can do all the training in the world and prepare as well as you want. Do all the little 1%ers, as they say in sport, but until getting to that start line, anything can happen. A lot of it, as was the case with most of the things that happened to me, they were out of my control. So you need to have strong resolve within yourself and actually sort of just bounce back every time and just go, look, it is what it is. Control the controllables, and just try your hardest to get to where you want to be and continue focusing on that goal, which for me was to get to that start line. If you've got a passion and you've got goals in life and you've got direction, that's the key, and that allows you to face all these challenges in life and actually overcome them. Hopefully those little stories I've shared and my experiences have actually helped everyone, not just if you've got a vision impairment. Thank you.